I spent the first days after giving birth with a breast pump, cabbage leaves, and a crying baby on my chest. Was it worth it? It was the biggest lesson in patience in my life. Even though I sometimes bit my teeth from the pain, I don't regret it, says Sandra, who has been breastfeeding her daughter for a year and a half. Like other young mums, she also believes that breastfeeding creates a special bond with your baby and a huge sacrifice. From August 1st to August 7th, we celebrate World Breastfeeding Week. For many women, this stage of infant care is a very complex process. Before giving birth, I didn't realize how much work you need to do to learn how to breastfeed correctly. Sandra recalls the first weeks of the postpartum period. Young mothers also talk about attachment. I think I was more addicted than my daughter. I was constantly looking for excuses not to give up breastfeeding. Yagoda confides problems with weaning a 3-year-old. The decision to breastfeed must be made consciously. A mother must understand that it also affects the child's future. The psychological support that a woman needs during this period is described by midwife and lactation consultant Anna Merrick. Sandra has been feeding her daughter for 18 months. Amanda weaned her son when he was 2.5 years old. Yagoda finished lactation just before the child's 3rd birthday. In her case, her daughter weaned herself from the breast. Each of them went through this stage differently. In an interview with Onet, they talked about the problems and dilemmas that often accompany young mothers. The beginning was a road through torment. Sandra has always wanted to breastfeed. Throughout her pregnancy, she was preparing for the role of a mother. I treated breastfeeding as a natural process that every woman undergoes. I have read several breastfeeding guides. I carefully listened to the advice of the midwife at the birthing school. I thought I had explored the subject as much as possible, and nothing would surprise me. Amanda's mother tells me. She made a mistake. Disappointment came on the first day after giving birth. The fact that I could not give birth naturally was a source of frustration for me. I was afraid of a cesarean section. I was alone in the hospital due to the restrictions related to the pandemic. I had no support from my husband. I had to rely on the midwives and myself. It's hard to even describe the feelings and emotions that tormented me then. The young mother met a very compassionate staff. The midwives showed her how to put her daughter to the breast. Unfortunately, he had trouble latching on to one nipple. He was sucking badly. This caused me to get mastitis. And so, the first days of motherhood passed for me. The beginning was an ordeal. I spent the first days after giving birth with a breast pump, cabbage leaves, and a crying baby on my chest. He woke up every hour like clockwork, says Sandra. Only after a few weeks lactation stabilized. After that, my daughter learned to breastfeed, and I fed her. I use the word, learning, because I didn't realize how much work it takes to learn how to breastfeed correctly before giving birth. Has Sandra considered switching to formula milk? I had moments of doubt. For a moment, I even thought that I was not suitable for this, that it was not for me. However, I would have given up without my husband's support and the lactation consultant's support. Was it worth it? It was the greatest lesson in patience in my life and the essence of motherhood. Even though I've bitten my teeth from the pain many times, I don't regret it. I have built a close bond with my daughter. I've been breastfeeding for 18 months and don't even think about stopping. She nor I am ready for this yet. My psychoholic son, Amanda, a mother of a 3.5-year-old son, has a similar opinion on attachment parenting. She also gave birth by cesarean section. As a result, I had to feed my son every 2 hours during the day and every 4 hours at night to get him to lactation. I am grateful to the midwife who supported me during this challenging period. Her advice proved invaluable. I think it was thanks to her that I found myself in the role of a nursing mother so quickly. Amanda recalls the first months of motherhood. After a year, the pediatrician suggested she slowly wean her baby off the breast. Unfortunately, my son was a typical titsaholic. At the sight of the bottle, he immediately started to cry. My mother, now 32, tells me, "I didn't want to stress the child, but on the other hand, I felt a lot of pressure." My mother-in-law and my internist said I was crazy for feeding so much. I even heard it was disgusting. Despite these unpleasant comments, Amanda decided to gradually wean her son. He was then 2.5 years old. Evenings and nights were the worst. It was one big attack of hysteria, recalls the unsuccessful attempts of the young mother. Only after a few weeks did her son find himself in a new situation. Time, conversation, and my consistency in action meant that after a few weeks, he began to fall asleep without feeding. He cuddled up to his chest and fell asleep to this day. Although she is 3.5 years old, she still mentions, "eat." I miss that closeness a bit, too, Amanda confides. I wasn't mentally ready. Yagoda, a mother of a 4-year-old daughter, also tells me about the pressure she felt when feeding her 3-year-old daughter, but also about her attachment. She just had no problems with stimulating lactation. It was definitely more complicated for her to finish this stage. The pediatrician suggested several times to give up feeding. Even my husband thought it was taking too long. Finally, he suggested that I go away for the weekend. He thought it was better that way. Otherwise, I would never wean the baby. I did not agree to such a radical solution, says the 27-year-old. Why did she refuse help? I think I was more addicted than my daughter. I was constantly looking for excuses not to give up breastfeeding. Since the little one was a fussy eater, I thought milk would compensate for any deficiencies. She says that I kept telling myself that the baby needed to drink milk, but I just wasn't mentally ready for it. There is nothing more beautiful than the closeness that breastfeeding gives. For me, this is the quintessence of motherhood, says my interlocutor after 4 years. So how did she manage to finish breastfeeding? My daughter made the decision for me. One day she returned from kindergarten and said that she doesn't want to breastfeed anymore, recalls Yagoda. Every decision must be made consciously. I asked a lactation consultant midwife Anna Merrick for a comment on breastfeeding. According to the expert, most of the problems young mothers face can be solved with the support of specialists. I look at lactation problems from 2 sides. There is a group of women who give up already at the beginning of the puerperium due to their lack of knowledge. These mothers are not looking for specialist help. They do not know who a lactation consultant is. Some women are inspired by the experiences of people around them. They're looking for a scapegoat. It's a mistake. Every decision we make must be made consciously. A woman must understand that the way of feeding also affects the future of the child. Perhaps problems with sucking result from, for example, issues with the frenulum, says midwife and lactation consultant Anna Merrick. The lactation specialist also talks about psychological support, which should be provided primarily to women in childbirth. Often the problem is a psychological barrier, and my role is to break this barrier. For example, suppose a patient is unable to breastfeed for any reason. In that case, I help her to stop lactation naturally, without medication. I don't look at my patients in terms of better or worse. Every mother deserves advice, and we do everything to make her and her baby happy. This is our job.